Hi everybody, we're going to talk about spices and seasonings. We're going to talk about spices, seasonings, and herbs. And your difference of the categories, the herbs of course are leaves and well, any of the varieties, including strange things along the lines of rosemary and lavenders and things along that line, still considered an herb, still considered an edible product. But we're just going to play with our standard herbs today. Rosemary and thyme and oreganos and things along that line. But we're also going to talk about different spices. We're going to talk about the idea of buying as whole as you can, as opposed to ground, so you can get the fresher flavor. We're going to talk about toasting a little bit of some of the seeds. Much better flavor if you give them a little bit of heat. You toast them a little bit. We'll put them through a grinder and we'll start making up a few blends. We'll play with those. I think that a lot of people, when it comes down to spices and seasonings, they don't understand how important they were to history with the amount of basically countries were originated and financed by way of ships looking for spices and seasonings. North America was discovered only because of that. At the same time, the wealth and the amount of monies that were paid for the items that today we can buy for $1 a package, you know, $2 a package for a quality product, at one time would be equivalent to a man's salary, a year's salary. And anyways, let's get on with we'll do some chopping, we'll do some cooking, we'll do some eating, and we'll talk a little bit more about each one of the spices we come across them. Right now, Tammy was chopping up a few of the fresh herbs, and fresh herbs are wonderful to use on a day-to-day, but a lot of people talk about when they buy a fresh herb, what are they going to do with it if they don't use enough of it, correct? Okay, so what we're going to do today, if Tammy's chopping it all up, we're going to chop up some nice fresh product. The problem with fresh herbs, they don't like to store in a freezer. The cell walls will break, they expand and they break. So what we're going to do is a technique where we're simply going to chop them up, put them into an ice cube tray, and we're going to freeze them. And you can do them individually. You can come up with a nice little recipe of 2 or 3 Italian-style herbs. So you can do oregano, you can do thyme, and you can do rosemary, and put it all into the same cube. Put it in the freezer, take it out, put it into a storage bag. Anytime you're making spaghetti, anytime you're making a pasta, you're making a marinara of any type, you're just going to drop one of those into your dish, and you'll still end up with the same flavor as your fresh herbs.
I like to roll my basil when I cut it up.
Absolutely.
Makes it look like I cut it so perfectly. Nice and uniform. Oh, the smell of basil freshly cut. Oh.
And of course, your oils will stay nice and fresh when they're
and I love making like pesto with my basil.
Sure.
And adding it to my pasta sauces. That's why you can't go wrong when you say, "Oh, I have no fresh basil." Yes, you do. It's right here. You pull it out of your little cube and throw it in, and let it melt away, and you're good to go.
I used to take the Italian blend and just set it on top of a roast. Just set it on top of anything going into your oven.
There's our Italian blend.
Literally melts over top, and all the flavors go through.
Exactly.
Okay.
Perfect. And
so that's just one little hint, one little suggestion to do. It's very convenient, very easy to do. And of course, if you're using using up some of your store-bought herbs, it's a good way that if you're using it for that day's recipe, you always end up with leftover herbs. Store it this way, you're good. You can still wash your fresh herbs, pat them dry, put them in tin foil, and put them in the freezer. They will hold up okay. They're not the world's best for a salad, but for cooking, they're fine. Okay.
Perfect.
Well, from here, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about a couple of the chilies. We're going to go towards a Mexican-style flavor.
Right behind the wall.
And we're going to go with standard chili powder that everybody uses when they make their chili. Now, chili powder consists of a blend, and of course, every company has a different recipe for their blend, but there are some basic ingredients that have to be put in. A sweet pepper, which can be 2 or 3 different types of peppers. But then from there, you have to have the ancho pepper, a little bit of chipotle pepper, and either a bird's eye or a cayenne. So that's your heat. Okay? Now your chipotles do have some heat, but they're not the same heat units as the bird's eye. These are combined, and you can add some garlic, you can add some coriander, you can add whatever you like. Most of them do have a little bit of oregano, very traditional Mexican flavor. If possible, you can get some Mexican oregano, that's even better. If not, the Greek oregano is fine. But if you're interested in creating a flavor of your own chili powder as opposed to a commercial chili powder, this is basically what you're going to need. And on top of that, we're going to need a few cumin seeds. Cumin seeds are very, very important to the Mexican cooking. Adds a very deep, earthy type of flavor to any dish. And that was one of the ones that we were talking about and really thinking that we should do a little toasting here and show you exactly what we're saying when we're talking about blossoming in a seed. Okay, well, we're gonna heat up a little bit of our ingredients to make a nice chili powder. You can do this with any of the other blends, any of the other seeds that you're making up. Stay away from the dried herbs and such, but if you're making up anything with your peppercorns, corianders, cumins, for any nationality, it is a really good idea to heat it, just to give it a little toasting. You can use a little bit of oil, especially if you're looking at turmerics and things along that line. But for this one, very, very light oil. You just want to heat the pan slightly. We're going to put in a little bit of cumin, a little bit of coriander, and Tammy gave us a little sliced up ancho peppers. Now all we're doing is we're actually just bringing out the essential oils. We're going to toast it that little bit. And I think that every household really needs a little coffee mill. Coffee mill, spice mill, call it what you want. They're not that expensive. Anytime you can buy any of your spices whole, grind it fresh, you're way ahead of the game. Okay? Unfortunately, we don't have smell-o-vision yet. This is already creating a nice scent. Okay, and again, you don't do this for long, you just bring up the flavor. From here, we're gonna take it, we're gonna put it in our grinder. And on top of that, we're just gonna grind that up and we're gonna put in just a little tablespoon of paprika. Okay, let's put in our tablespoon of paprika.
That's so good.
So now we've created our own chili powder.
Isn't that gorgeous?
And from there, of course, we're gonna seal it up. I like to use a blend that I've toasted and created within 90 days. If it goes 6 months, you're still okay. But try to do it every 90 days or so. The flavor difference for each dish is just incredible. Still going, playing up on the idea of try to use as much as you can in the whole version of your spices. Daniel's going to just demonstrate quickly about the cinnamon sticks and some whole nutmegs. Again, they retain their flavor so much better.
You know, especially when you're using nutmeg and you're using it fresh like this, that little bit in a recipe is pretty much all you need because it's fresh and it's freshly ground, so it's just so vibrant with it. It's potent. Like if you use a lot of nutmeg, you're gonna really taste it in your baking. So make sure a little bit goes a long way when it comes to your freshly ground spices. And same with your cinnamon. You're just gonna take your stick. Cinnamon, you probably use a little bit more, but you can see that it's a nice fine, and it's just so, you can smell it just from that first little grate, right?
It's amazing if you just even take a bowl of ice cream and
you
sprinkle and literally grate some fresh cinnamon over the top.
A little bit of
and you just
nutmeg.
change-
I'm talking a pinch of nutmeg, because
You
like,
just change your vanilla ice cream
Exactly.
into a beautiful cinnamon ice cream.
and it goes good with anything. Put on your, you can make syrups, and you can use your natural honey and sugars, whatever you want, right? And that's basically, in a nutshell,
In a nutshell.
how to freshly ground up and you can make a bunch of this, just like we did with our other spices. You can grind up this and put it in a container and save it till you need it. But fresh is always best, just a little bit does you. And it's so expensive if you buy this already ground up. You'll pay $5 for a little
Absolutely.
tin of, nutmeg and cinnamon. So this, it's a lot, but it makes a whole lot more. And you can add these and cook them in your make a nice drink out of your cinnamon for Christmas time and put them as
Put one stick in your drink and you're hanging on.
Stir it.
Yeah, and you're all set. And take any of the broken pieces that you find, you snap those off, you can put those in your coffee, wonderful flavor. You can actually take any of the really small pieces you break off, and at any time my grandmother would have 3 or 4 or 5 of those pieces in a little bowl at the back of the stove, and the entire house will smell as if you're baking apple pies, which I thought was...
We don't have no vanilla bean, but that's another one. You take that vanilla bean, because vanilla is so expensive right now, and you take it, you cut it, slice it right down the middle. It looks like this, but only it's a little bit darker. Your vanilla bean, you scrape those little seeds and put that in your whatever, ice cream if you wanted to make your own ice cream, or as you're baking, you can add that to so spices, and it brings things alive. That's important when you're baking and cooking, that you utilize all this greatness. So, but good job, though. Thank you.
I'm just putting out a couple of spices to show that probably you don't have in your cupboard. That's your sumac, and that's the cardamom, okay? These are ones that I really wanted to talk about, only to say, experiment with a few of the different flavors of the world. Sumac is a Lebanese, Mediterranean, Greeks will use, has a bitter flavor, almost a lemony type of flavor, but still has its own unique flavor. Try it out sometime. You can try it with many different things. Use it in a salad dressing, put it into a dip, okay? Any of the varieties here. Play with the recipes, play with different things. We're going to send a couple of recipes out to you. And all I'm saying is that anytime you see a different spice, you haven't tried it before, try it out and see what it does for you. Cardamom, same thing. Cardamom is used in coffees throughout Turkey. Basically, if you have what they basically call a Lebanese coffee, there's going to be cardamom. They call it kale, but you break a couple of the pods, you put it into the coffee and let it go through. Adds a wonderful flavor to your coffee. But at the same time, experimentation with any of the spices you see here. Take it easy when you first try it. Put a little bit in, so that if it's not a flavor you like, that's okay. The next time you do it, you enjoyed that flavor, you're going to add a little bit more.
Kind of like using salt. Don't over salt. Don't over season.
Don't over
You can't take it away. You can always add.
And that's the key to spices. Use the spices. Don't use the salt. You don't need as much sodium. There's so much sodium in everything we eat today. So much easier, so much better. Substitute it for an actual flavor.